In 1925, this man went missing and has never been seen since. But to understand the truth behind his disappearance, we have to go all the way back to the 15th century. Ever since European explorers made contact with the New World, treasure hunters have ventured into the Amazon rainforest. Many were searching for El Dorado, the legendary city of gold said to exist somewhere in South America. Initially, the name El Dorado referred to the ruler of the city, the Golden One, a man so wealthy he would cover himself in gold dust every morning. But over time, the legend evolved. The Golden King was forgotten, and in his place it was believed El Dorado was an entire city made of solid gold. 16th century explorers were not known for their honesty, so in a whirlwind of rumour and blatant lies, this further evolved into the legend of 7 cities of gold. 7 lost cities filled with gold and treasure just waiting to be found. Nobody knew for certain what part of the Americas they were in, which is usually a sign the rumours are true. And over the centuries, countless treasure hunters arrived. Gradually, the map of South America was filled in, until only the most remote jungle regions were left uncharted, where only the bravest and most reckless people dared to go. Among those brave explorers was Percy Fawcett. Now, Percy might not be a name you'd expect a brave person to have, but to be fair, he was born in 1867. It was a different time. Nothing was normal about the family he was born into. His father was a professional cricket player who was constantly drunk and gambled away the family fortune. His older brother Edward, though, was even weirder, being a world-travelling mountaineer and author of adventure books, who at some point got really into the occult. Secret occult societies exploded in popularity during the late 19th century, often meeting on dark nights to perform strange rituals. Some genuinely believed they had access to divine knowledge, but only group members knew for certain what they were doing. Edward was deeply involved, and ended up writing for many of their publications, one of which was a magazine literally called Lucifer. These are the people Percy Fawcett grew up around, so it's no wonder he ended up being such a weirdo. Serving with distinction in the British Army, he eventually developed an interest in archaeology, as well as surveying and map-making. Adventure was in his blood, and in 1906 he was sent to the Amazon rainforest, tasked with mapping an extremely remote, uncharted area. While there, he claims to encounter all kinds of new species of animal. By 1912, his reports from the jungle had inspired a book by Arthur Conan Doyle, The Lost World, about a place deep in the Amazon where dinosaurs still live. Around the same time, indigenous Amazonians began telling Fawcett stories of a lost city, a city built from silver and gold. Based on these stories, he developed a theory of a giant unknown city hidden among the jungles of central Brazil. He called it the Lost City of Zed. As time went on, he became more and more certain of its existence, especially on getting his hands on a mysterious document known as Manuscript 512. Nobody knows who wrote the document. It was discovered in Brazil's National Library in 1839, and according to it, a group of Portuguese explorers happened upon a great ruined city all the way back in 1753. Many modern historians think the manuscript is a hoax, but I think those people are boring losers. Percy Fawcett agreed with me, and after a break from exploring thanks to him being drafted in World War I, he was soon back in the Amazon rainforest. In 1920, he set off alone into the jungle, with hopes high he could locate the city. But the jungle sucks big time. He fell sick and the expedition was ended almost immediately. For 5 frustrating years he prepared for his next attempt, and on finally setting off again in 1925, he was not alone. With him was his son Jack, his good friend Raleigh Rimmel and 2 Brazilian labourers. They also brought 8 mules, 2 horses and 2 dogs. They had guns, provisions and more than enough tools to navigate the dense jungle. Clearly he had learned from his previous failed expedition. Not enough to stop going into uncharted areas of the jungle, but to be fair, this was before they had video games. On April 20th they departed from the city of Cuiabá, disappearing into the jungle never to be seen again. The last anyone heard of Percy Fawcett was on May 29th, in the form of a letter written to his wife. It told that he was currently at a place called Dead Horse Camp, which, first of all, great name, and that he was about to set off into a region so far unexplored by non-natives. And so the expedition literally stepped into the unknown. More than 100 years later, we do not know what happens to them. There are many theories as to their fate. Most popular is that they were killed by a hostile native group, or were struck down by disease. But according to one theory, they were adopted by a local tribe, and for whatever reason, chose to live out their natural lives deep in the Amazon. The mystery of their disappearance captivated the public internationally, and following years would see numerous expeditions to find out what happened. Said rescue missions would fail though, resulting only in strange rumours. A breakthrough came in 1951 when a Brazilian explorer got his hands on what he claimed were the skeletal remains of Percy Fawcett. If the story is to be believed, the expedition were unlucky enough to stray into hostile territory, and having lost much of their gear in a boating accident, had little in the way of peace offerings. That in a region where a lack of gift giving was seen as an act of war, let's just say it ended badly. Jack Fawcett and Raleigh Rimmel had their bodies thrown into the nearest river, but as leader of the group, Percy was given a proper burial. Then decades later, the bones were dug up and sold. Needless to say, people were skeptical of this story, especially as the decades stretched on and no DNA evidence ever emerged. Many others would claim to find evidence of Percy Fawcett being murdered by natives, and sometimes even cannibalized. But in 1979, people began to suspect he may have been killed by bandits, thanks to his signet ring turning up in a pawn shop in Brazil. And it was not the only trace of Percy Fawcett discovered after his disappearance. In 1928, the explorer George Miller Dyaud attempted to trace his steps. While at a small and remote native village, he noticed they had in their possession a metal clothing case, one of the exact same make Percy Fawcett had. On further investigation, he was told that a party of white men had passed through the village several years before. They had traded the case for supplies, and despite being visibly exhausted and sick, continued their journey deeper into the jungle. They did not make it much further though, as they soon encountered a notorious tribe known as the Suyas. For Dyaud, this was the end of the story, and before long he reported back to London that Percy Fawcett had been killed. This explanation was widely accepted in Europe, but with the only evidence for it being a metal case and a story told in a village, the mystery lived on. We know the group did not bring enough food to sustain their entire journey, reasoning that the Amazon rainforest was full of edible fruit. But fruit alone is insufficient to support the human body, and if they struggled to hunt wild animals, it's entirely possible they died of starvation. Disease too is a possibility. In fact, it's probably the most likely cause of death. Percy Fawcett was no stranger to the jungle, and in his previous expeditions he got along well with indigenous peoples, so it's not obvious they were murdered. Still, given he was leading the group into a region largely unknown to the outside world, we really have no way of knowing. Some newspapers wrote stories claiming Percy Fawcett was adopted by a tribe of cannibals, eventually becoming their leader, using modern science to crush indigenous rivals, which just goes to show the newspapers have always been a bunch of weird, creepy liars. We also don't know the truth behind his theory. Is there really a lost city of Zed, a city built of silver and gold hidden deep in the Amazon? Or was Percy Fawcett simply chasing a legend? I personally believe there could be many lost cities in the Amazon rainforest still waiting to be found, and who's to say one of them isn't a real-life El Dorado? But I want to know what you think, so feel free to let me know in the comments.
And now the adventurers leave the wilds and push downstream toward civilization. It's beautiful here, but only creatures of the wild can live in the wilds forever.